Final Fantasy IV may not have been anywhere close to the first game I played, but it was one of the first games that really gripped me with its story and characters. While games before this did have stories, they always felt pretty thin and didn't often have any sort of character development or too complex of narratives. Final Fantasy IV was the first game that really showed me what video game stories could accomplish, even though by today's standards it is a fairly straightforward story in its own right. That's why I want to share some of my favorite moments from Final Fantasy IV. My original idea was to share each moment from games that I really enjoyed in separate videos, but that didn't really work out. So I decided to do a list and at least share a few moments from some of my favorite games throughout the years. And Final Fantasy IV is simply the first to get the treatment. Now, considering the nature of this video, this is very much going to be a list that contains spoilers. So if you don't want the story of Final Fantasy IV spoiled at all, I would recommend saving the video until after you've played it. If you have played the game or just don't care that much about spoilers, then let's move right on to the list. At number 5, I have Tellah Sacrifice. Cecil first meets the Master Sage Tellah soon after he leaves the service of the nation of Baron once he realizes that the nation he grew up in and served has turned evil. Cecil had recently been tricked into destroying the summoner village of Mist and is now protecting one of the only survivors of that attack, Rydia. Cecil and Rydia are traveling to Damcyan to gain a cure for Rosa, who has desert fever. In the underground waterway leading to Damcyan, they meet Tellah, who is chasing after his daughter Anna, who is eloped with a bard. He joins your group and you all head to Damcyan together. As you approach the kingdom though, Baron's airships come and bomb the city, damaging it greatly and killing many. One of those killed is Anna, and this sends Tellah on a quest for revenge against Golbez, the new leader of the Red Wings. He seeks the spell Meteor and vows to use it against the man who killed his daughter. Tellah does learn this spell and gets his chance to use it later on in the game when your party is trying to rescue Rosa from the Tower of Zot. Tellah goes against Golbez in a 1v1 that shows Tellah not really being very effective, as he pretty much unleashes every spell in his arsenal against Golbez, and Golbez just kind of shrugs everything off. Due to this, Tellah decides that he has to use Meteor and does so at the cost of his own life. He is able to damage Golbez though, even though he's not able to fully defeat him. So it kind of winds up being this bittersweet moment in the game. Tellah is also one of the few sacrifices in Final Fantasy IV that actually sticks, and it makes it a little bit more powerful overall. Tellah definitely does help the party in this moment. He's able to damage Golbez enough to get him to retreat. He's able to get Kain shook out of his brainwashing that's been going on, and the party is then able to save Rosa. However, Tellah doesn't necessarily see it this way. He kind of sees that his vengeance clouded his judgment and really didn't gain him a lot in the end. You want Tellah to be successful here. You're kind of cheering him on, even though you know that this isn't maybe the best plan and that things are probably going to end up not going well. So the loss of such a character just made for a really powerful moment in the game, and one that you saw coming in some ways, but still had a pretty big emotional impact. The fourth moment I have is the Golbez and Kain reveal. When Cecil is sent on his mission to the Village of Mist, the Dragoon Kain is sent with him after he tried to defend Cecil's loyalty. As they realize the truth behind that mission, they try to flee Baron with Rydia, but Rydia summons Titan and causes an earthquake. While Cecil wakes up near Rydia, Kain is nowhere to be found. Cecil, knowing that Baron is after them, pushes on, hoping that Kain is okay and that they'll reunite at some point. For a long while, you don't really know where Kain is, but as you are defending the Wind Crystal in Fabul, Kain suddenly appears. Unexpectedly, he begins to fight Cecil instead of help his friend defend the crystal. Cecil is confused and defeated by Kain, but Kain is unable to finish him off due to the interference of Yang and Rosa. Even though Kain is stopped, the mysterious evil figure enters the scene in the person of Golbez, and he makes quite a first impression. He takes out both Yang and Edward with one blast, takes Rosa hostage, and orders Kain to grab the crystal. This serves as a massive defeat for your party and a pretty badass introduction to the character you think is going to be the main antagonist of the game. It also leaves you with many questions. Why is Kain working with Golbez? Who is Golbez? How are you going to become strong enough to be victorious against someone who took out two members of your party with so little effort? This scene does a great job revealing a main villain and leaving you with some mystery to try to figure out and a goal to achieve. Third moment is Rydia's return. Shortly after your party's defeat while defending the Wind Crystal, you are hit with another major disaster. Your party plans to use a boat to infiltrate Baron. While Baron has a very strong force in the air, their navy is not so great, so they thought that maybe by using a boat you'd be able to sneak in a little bit easier. The goal is to talk to the engineer Cid and see if he can get Cecil access to an airship. On the way to Baron though, the ship is attacked by Leviathan and destroyed with the members of your party scattered. And over time you do meet up with those lost to the attack. You meet Yang when Cecil finally gets to Baron. He's either amnesiac or under some kind of mind control or both and working for Baron. Cecil and party is able to break him out of whatever's going on with Yang and get him to rejoin the party. Later on then you find Edward in Troia, still recovering from the severe wounds he received due to the shipwreck. However, you are left to wonder about Rydia for quite some time. Her return though is well worth the wait. When you make it to the underworld, you find the dwarves there in battle with Baron. It turns out that the dwarven castle has one of the dark crystals and is the next target of Golbez. While your party is there talking to the king and his daughter in the throne room, you realize that something suspicious is going on in the crystal room that's behind the throne room. When you go to see what that thing is, you realize that the dolls of the king's daughter Luca are being controlled by Golbez to steal the crystal. While your party is successful in defeating the dolls, Golbez himself appears. Again, Golbez overpowers your party by summoning a shadow dragon that immobilizes and defeats every party member except Cecil and Kane if he's mid-jump. Now right before the shadow dragon takes down Cecil, a mist dragon appears defeating it and damaging Golbez in the process. Then a very different looking Rydia joins to help take out Golbez. It turns out that she's been in the land of summons since the shipwreck and that time flows quite differently there, which is why she's all grown up now since the last time she was in the party. Also, due to her getting older and the training that she's undergone, she loses her ability to do white magic and is much more of your damage dealer. She excels in black magic and summoning from this point and is your main source of attack magic, which she does great at. And this was a fairly unique moment, with Rydia changing so much from her previous self. While you do have other characters who join your party at different times and leave and then rejoin again later on, nobody changes quite as much as Rydia does. Both this fact and the way she returns in style makes Rydia's return a pretty awesome moment and a welcome return of a character long missing. At number 2, I have the Giant of Babel reunion. Near the end of the game, Golbez is able to collect all 8 crystals needed to transport the Giant of Babel to Earth. The purpose of this giant was to destroy the humans on Earth so that the Lunarians could colonize the planet themselves. This project was rejected and the giant was sealed away, because when you've got a giant robot built for destruction, you don't destroy that when you decide not to use it, you just seal it away for a villain to be able to access at a later time, I guess. Regardless, with Golbez successful, the giant begins to march on Earth looking to destroy it. It is here that the giant is met with great resistance from both dwarven tanks and airships. Within these vehicles are many characters that you've met along the way, including former party members, some of which were thought lost. In the tanks, you find the dwarf king Jot and his daughter Luca, and Yang in the Sylphs in the other one. While in the 3 airships, we have Cid in the first, the Elder of Mysidia with a recovered Palam and Param in the second one, and the third contains a recovered Edward with the rulers of Troia. I've always been a big fan of scenes like this. When a narrative uses its cast of characters to band together for a climactic battle, it just hits me. It's almost a guaranteed way to get me a little emotional when telling the story. I don't really know why this is. I think it's just the fact that when a piece of media like this uses its cast of characters to show that it hasn't just been this group that you've been following who's been involved in the fight, but all of these people have been supporting them and working in their own ways, it just really hits me for some reason. I think I like the fact that you're not alone in this battle, and the fact that you get to see that support in some tangible way in a narrative, it just really gets to me. I know that Final Fantasy IV gets a bit of a bad rap for having so many sacrifice moments that don't really have any lasting consequences, but for me, the ability to have a scene like this makes it all worth it. Final Fantasy IV's cast, while it's fairly large for the time, isn't huge, and due to the fact that a number of people could have sacrificed their lives and not been able to be here, I'm kind of willing to take that trade-off. I'd rather have the ability for a moment like this, even though some of the survival stories are maybe a little bit out there, than just have those sacrifices be like, oh, they're gone now, and move on. I know that's maybe not the view of everybody, but that's kind of my take on it. And my top moment from Final Fantasy IV is Cecil becoming a paladin. Many early games may have had main character changes due to power-ups, like think Mario's Fire Flower, or some kind of upgrades over the course of the game. The idea that comes to mind here is Mega Man and his upgrades that you get like by beating the various robot masters. But Final Fantasy IV was the first game that felt like it made a substantial change to the main character. Cecil starts off the game a Dark Knight. He's been trained as such by the King of Baron, and in the early game discovers that he is a pawn being used for evil intentions. The massacre at Mysidia and the destruction of Mist Village are both pivotal events that open Cecil's eyes to this reality. Despite being a Dark Knight, Cecil doesn't really embrace the dark nature of this position, instead feeling great guilt and remorse for what he's been forced to do, and worried that at some point he will become used to committing these atrocities. And it is out of this concern and out of this worry that Cecil winds up rejecting the path that Baron is taking and seeks to thwart whatever plan they have. After the shipwreck that scatters the party that I mentioned earlier, Cecil finds himself alone near the town of Mysidia. Due to his actions at the beginning of the game, Cecil is understandably met with quite a cold reception. Talking to some of the inhabitants can result in Cecil being on the wrong end of some black magic. Despite this, the Elder does realize that Cecil is not the same as he was and desires to change. It is at this point that the Elder warns Cecil of his continued reliance on the Dark Sword. The Elder then recommends that Cecil seek to become a paladin in order to replace his Dark Sword with a Sword of Light. This would be more effective in fighting evil and would truly show that Cecil has changed. Of course, nobody who has tried this has ever returned alive. Even with this ominous warning, Cecil takes up this quest with a couple of kindergarten-aged mages and heads to Mount Ordeals, and the mountain lives up to its name. Cecil reunites with Tella on this mountain, who is seeking the powerful spell Meteor. Your party faces the first elemental fiend, Scarmiglione, twice actually. He has control over the undead and has an advantage against Cecil, as Dark Knights aren't super effective against undead. Then after all of this, there is the actual trial to become a paladin that Cecil must face alone. This battle might confuse those who don't know what to do. If you keep attacking your past as a Dark Knight, you will never win and eventually be defeated. Instead, you simply have to do nothing for a while, showing that Cecil accepts his past and is not trying to fight it, even though he is moving on from it. And this just felt like a huge change. Now, admittedly, his paladin look isn't quite as cool as the Dark Knight armor, but it undoubtedly matched Cecil's personality far better. I had never played a game before this that had the main character change so much. This just made for such a memorable moment in the game for me and felt like such a significant shift for Cecil as a character. I felt like this was where Cecil aligned all of his choices with the kind of man he wanted to be. He wanted to embrace a life of light and justice, not one of darkness. He wanted forgiveness for his past actions and desired to protect and not destroy. And I just loved this change and thought it was a pivotal moment in the game and was my first memory of a character growing and changing over the course of a game's story. And those are my top 5 moments of Final Fantasy IV. There were a lot of memorable moments for me in this game, but these are my top favorites. It is definitely one of my top Final Fantasy games in general, and one that really deepened my love for the Final Fantasy series and RPGs in general. What about you? What are some of your favorite moments from Final Fantasy IV? Were there moments you loved that didn't make my list? Moments that made the list that you loved as well? I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. That's all for this video though, so I'll see you in the next one.